All right, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack what is, quite frankly, a totally historic political earthquake. We're looking at the regional seat of Farah, where a massive shock election result just sent an absolute tidal wave through the established political order. Now, right off the bat, our goal here isn't to take political sides. Instead, we're going to act as objective guides. We'll look at the hard data, the expert commentary, and the political autopsy of exactly how a major party stronghold just collapsed, literally overnight. We'll use the analysis from election experts to really get to the bottom of how this happened, why it happened, and what it could mean for the entire future of modern politics. So, here's our roadmap for today's Explainer. We'll start with Section 1, a 77-year stronghold falls. Then, Section 2, anatomy of a political collapse. Section 3, a global conservative wave. And finally, Section 4, rebuilding voter trust.
Starting right off with Section 1, a 77-year stronghold falls and the historic election night.
According to election analysts, what we just witnessed wasn't just your standard run-of-the-mill election loss. It was the sudden obliteration of a political dynasty in a historically incredibly loyal landscape. To really grasp the sheer magnitude of this upset, just think about this number for a second: 77. The seat of Farah had been an absolute ironclad stronghold for the coalition, specifically the Liberal and National parties, since its very inception, all the way back in 1949. For 77 years, through 30 different elections, they held the seat without a single exception. And that unbroken streak, it shattered overnight when one nation claimed lower house representation at a general election for the very first time.
When we break down the numbers, the explosive shift in the data really tells the whole story. Just over a year ago, less than 7% of voters in Farah cast their ballot for one nation. But on this historic night, they achieved a massive positive swing of nearly 35 points. That is a landslide. Conversely, the Liberal primary vote suffered an absolutely catastrophic collapse, dropping down to just over 12%. So voters didn't just casually drift away, they decisively and loudly abandoned a 77-year tradition.
And to bring in a bit of the human element from the source material, listen to what Pauline Hanson said on the night, which really captures the emotion for the minor party. She said, "I actually got a tear in my eye. I'm seeing the sea of this proud Australians' faces here in front of me. I believe it's giving them hope." Analysts point out that this victory isn't just a statistical fluke. It's a massive stepping stone driven by real, palpable constituent frustration. These voters were using the ballot box to forcefully tell the entire nation exactly what they wanted.
Okay, moving into Section 2, anatomy of a political collapse and the disconnect in the outback.
A massive 31-point negative swing absolutely doesn't happen by accident, right? It stems from a very stark disconnect. Regional voters in Farah were screaming about real-world, everyday issues. We're talking a harsh cost of living crisis, soaring energy costs, and massive threats to industrial and agricultural jobs. But meanwhile, the Liberal Party was heavily consumed by internal infighting, inner-city concerns, and fending off teal independence. Analysts argue that by acting kind of labor light to appease the inner city, they completely lost touch with the regional communities that actually formed their bedrock.
And this stark disconnect is actually being recognized internally now. Take this pretty brutal admission from Angus Taylor, who's part of the new Liberal leadership tasked with picking up the pieces. He said, "For too long, we have been a party of convenience, not of conviction, and that must change." This hits on a major critique from political analysts, that decades of leadership casually allowed their deep-rooted connection with regional Australia to just erode away, leaving seats like Farah completely without the attention they deserved. Taking that a step further, senior Liberal Susan Ley issued a very public reality check to her own party. She warned that the leadership cannot simply brush this off or blame the defeat on recent coalition splits or the specific date of the vote. She urged the leadership to accept the crushing result with humility, pointing out the golden rule of democratic elections: voters never get it wrong. It's a clear, direct warning to face the deep-seated rejection by their traditional base head-on. But here's the really crucial takeaway. This shockwave is absolutely not just a Liberal Party problem. Analysts are loudly warning the Albanese Labour government that if their upcoming budget ignores this intense cost of living crisis, they could easily be the next victims of voter anger. Even the Teal and Climate 200 independents are officially on notice. There's a new, massive protest vote market out there, drawing from people whose economic hardships simply can no longer be ignored by anyone in power.
Which brings us to Section 3. A global conservative wave, and parallels across the pond.
Now, if you're thinking this was just some isolated incident in regional New South Wales, actually, scratch that. Think again. Check out this massive number, 1,400. Over in the recent UK council elections, established parties faced a remarkably similar scenario. Keir Starmer's Labour Party suffered a pretty humiliating defeat as the alternative, right-leaning populist party, Reform UK, made sweeping gains, claiming over 1,400 seats. It's almost the exact same story, ignored voters choosing the loudest alternative option on the ballot. Professor Tim Bale from Queen Mary University of London perfectly encapsulates this mirror effect we're seeing. He points out that Reform is currently leader of the pack in an increasingly multi-party system, having taken seats from the Conservatives as well as Labour. This really proves that the fairer result isn't just happening in a vacuum. A tidal wave of conservative populist politics is surging across the pond, effectively punishing major legacy parties of all stripes when they fail to listen to their constituents. So what does this all mean? Well, it points to a fundamental shift in modern politics. Analysts emphasize that choosing a minor party like One Nation is no longer just a temporary, angry protest vote. It's actually evolved into what they call a vote of hope. Alienated voters genuinely believe that someone new is finally listening and might actually pull the country back to its foundations. They aren't just protesting anymore, they are actively searching for actual, tangible representation. Finally, let's jump into Section 4, Rebuilding Voter Trust, and the ultimate survival strategy. So how do these legacy parties stop the bleeding? Well, step one is admitting you've got a problem. Deputy Liberal leader Jane Hume openly acknowledged that trust was completely lost after the coalition endured 2 party splits in 12 months and seemingly abandoned their core policies. It left everyday voters completely confused about what the party actually stood for. She stated very clearly that the immediate #1 priority is listening to the public and rebuilding that lost faith. But how exactly do they rebuild? Well, political commentators have laid out 3 absolutely crucial survival steps. Step 1, stop attacking One Nation. Analysts say that strategy is dead in the water. Every attack just reinforces the narrative that the establishment is threatened, which hands the minor party the exact oxygen they want. Step 2, focus on serious economic management. The party needs to rediscover policies that actually reward hard work. And step 3, offer aspiration to younger Australians. They need a message that gives people a real sense they still have a shot at getting ahead in this economy. Attacking the symptoms just won't work anymore. They have to address the root causes. The analysts make it incredibly clear that the stakes right now are, frankly, existential. If these established parties don't find their foundations and find them fast, the state of Victoria could be next. This stops being a localized issue about one regional seat and becomes a highly serious question about whether these legacy political parties have a viable future at all. Majorities worldwide are learning the hard way what happens when you stop listening to the very people who built you. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative thought to ponder today. Can the established parties change before they are completely replaced? Will they adapt to this new vote of hope, or is this tidal wave going to continue washing away decades of political history? It's an absolutely fascinating structural shift in modern politics. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I will see you next time.